Hi guys, it's Taylor and welcome back to my channel. It's been a long time since I've made a video. Unfortunately, I got a really bad stomach flu the last week of Black History Month, which was February for those of you who don't know. And on top of that, I have been working really hard at my new job, so I haven't really had time to film. So what happened for the few weeks of Black History Month that I kind of missed out on because I was sick? So yeah, what happened?
And the Oscar goes to Green Book.
Can you excuse me for just a quick second? Sorry about that. So that's that really happened. So yeah, for February, I participated in Blackathon, the BookTube games, and I tried to participate in Valentine's, but that didn't really work out for me, although I did do a buddy read for that, so that was good. I didn't get as much reading done as I wanted to, and I've decided that this is why I need to do two TBRs, because otherwise things just go haywire. So let's talk about what I read for the month of February, shall we? The first book I read in February was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I read this for Blackathon. If you don't know, N.K. Jemisin is a very prolific Black fantasy writer, and I would say I'd have to agree. This book is fantastic. I believe I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm just probably not a huge adult fantasy person. On top of that, there were just some choices stylistically that were made for this book that I didn't personally enjoy. However, this is a fantastic book. It takes place in this world that is divided up into seasons, and there are these people called orogenies, which in a message I sent to Jesse from Bows Ties and Books, I accidentally my phone auto-corrected it to oregano, which that's how I read it for the rest of the book. But people with orogeny can create earthquakes and do really powerful things with the earth. However, because they are so powerful, they are oppressed by their country. Sometimes they are killed, sometimes they are forced to work for the government. So this book follows 3 women with orogeny: Damaya, Essen, and Sienite. So Essen is a woman who is married. She has hidden away her powers of orogeny, and she has made a family for herself. You know, she's married a man, she has a daughter and a son, and, you know, she's trying to just suppress her powers and live a normal life. However, after a huge earthquake, it is revealed that her youngest son also has these powers. Her husband, who didn't even know that he had married someone with orogeny, kills her son and leaves his body for Essen to find. Essen comes back and is devastated to find the body of her son, and she also finds out that her husband has kidnapped her daughter, and so she goes on this journey to find her daughter and kill her husband. With Damaya, she is a young girl with orogeny who was sort of ostracized by her school. Her family doesn't even want her living in the home. She is taken by a group of people known as the Guardians and is taken to a center where they train people with orogeny to sort of help out other people. However, there is more to this sort of school than meets the eyes. Finally, you have Sienite, who is sort of an older person in these orogeny schools, and she has been tasked with having sex and having a baby with a higher ranking man with orogeny. I think they're called orogenes, actually. A higher ranking man with orogeny. Their child is supposed to be very powerful, and then the center can use that child, I guess, to sort to their advantage. Neither of them really like each other, but they develop this interesting friendship, and the man, Alabaster, starts to teach Sienite about the underlying horrors of the institution they serve. This book is fantastic. I think the world building is interesting, even if I didn't understand it all of the time, and obviously there are a lot of parallels between orogeny and the Black experience, where if you read this, I mean, it pops right out at you. It's thick, but it's kind of a fast read, honestly. So yeah, I highly recommend the 5th season, and I'm actually looking forward to reading the 2nd book. The next book I read was the group book for Blackathon, and that is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This was my only, I think it was, yeah. This was my only 5-star read for the month of February. Honestly, it's going to be a future favorite. I absolutely adored this book. So I also got it from the library, but I am definitely buying a physical copy because I need to own it. This book follows Xiomara Batista, a young high school girl who is raised by a very conservative, very Catholic, very traditional mother. Elizabeth is Afro-Latina. Her family is Dominican. And when she becomes a teenager, she starts developing hips and thighs and breasts and like a butt. So she has a very developed body. And because of that, she has to deal with a lot of harassment from boys and men when she walks down the street. And her mother, who is terrified of her losing her virtue, wants to keep her locked up in her home. So Xiomara is kind of conflicted about this. On top of that, her mom wants her to take her confirmation, and Xiomara is having a lot of questions about the church and whether or not she wants to make this sort of commitment, or if she even can make this sort of commitment. On top of that, she starts having a crush on a boy at school, and she knows if her mother finds out, her mother will be absolutely furious with her for even just thinking about wanting to kiss a boy. On top of that, Xiomara wants to be a spoken word poet, and she wants to join a sort of spoken word poetry club at her school. However, these meetings are at the same time as her confirmation meetings. So there's a lot going on. What's really interesting about this book is that it is all written in verse, which makes it a really quick read. And for someone who is not a huge poetry person, I thought I wasn't going to like that aspect of it, but it made this book for me. The poetry is absolutely gorgeous. It conveys the story really well in a way that I don't think prose could. I love this book. It was nice to read about a girl who has all these conflicting feelings and emotions and how she sort of deals with it. If you have the chance to pick up this book, please, please, please do. It is one of my new favorite books. Next up, we have Between Shades of Grey by Rita Sepetys. This book I buddy read with Blue Sapphire, and she's really great. I'll leave the link to her channel down below, and she was an awesome person to buddy read with. However, I think she enjoyed this book a lot more than I did, and that has kind of led me to the conclusion that Rita Sepetys just might not be the author for me. I read her other book, God, what's it called? Salt to the Sea. I read her other book, Salt to the Sea, which was fine, and I think I liked better than this one, but it just wasn't for me. And I think what it comes down to is that her writing style doesn't gel. It's more recounting stories. The characters aren't characters. They're just vessels for us to sort of tell the story and talk about these tragedies. So if you don't know what this book is about, it's about a bunch of, I guess, Eastern European people who, during the reign of Stalin in Russia, were moved from their homes to gulags for speaking out against Russia. A lot of these people were in the gulags for 20 years, and when they were released, they weren't even allowed to speak about what their experiences. These people were starved to death, forced to live in absolutely frigid temperatures, forced to build their own homes, forced to scavenge for food. There were just countless deaths. I mean, Stalin was known for killing more people than Hitler, and it's devastating. So I want to kind of lead off this discussion with that. This book talks about really important issues, and it does well speaking about the people who unfortunately can never be honored for surviving such a terrible tragedy. However, my initial complaint still stands, where the characters are not compelling enough, and they tend to serve more of the plot and more as vessels telling us, or vessels to recount these events. And that just doesn't work for me as a person who prefers character-driven narratives. Plot's all well and good, but I'm not going to care about the plot if I don't care about the characters. And that's kind of where I was. Like I said, a very important subject matter that this book is discussing, and I think Rita Sepetys does convey that really, really well, but her writing style and her focus on plot before characters really just doesn't work for me. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars, if I didn't mention that earlier. Next up, we've got Dear Martin by Nick Stone. Guys, I really, really wanted to like this book, especially since I've met Nick Stone in person. She even signed this copy of the book for me. Oh, I put it on the jacket on backwards. But it says, Dear Taylor, you're gorgeous, stay fly and bookish, Nick Stone. And it was really nice, and she's just a really nice person. Unfortunately, this book ain't it, Chief. I had a lot of problems, and I think one of my biggest problems was that some of the writing comes off as really, really lazy. Like, there's a scene where Justice is in his debate class, and the debate just kind of it goes from regular prose to this sort of script format for seemingly no reason whatsoever. You know, there isn't some sort of narrative reason. Like, I think it would make sense if Justice wanted to go into film and TV, and that was how he sort of got his feelings out, but that is not the case. There's no reason for it to be a script format, and it comes off as lazy, like the author didn't want to add in the sort of dialogue tags or the descriptions. But before I get into more of why I didn't like this book, here's a quick summary. This kid, it's about this boy named Justin McAllister, and he is a young black teen. He has done everything right, so to speak. He goes to an elite private prep school. He has great grades. He's on track to go to Yale. And I believe later on he does, spoiler alert, he does get accepted to Yale. He's on track to go to Yale. He has done everything that he should to sort of be accepted by society. However, his feelings on that change when he himself is a victim of police brutality. This sort of idea that you can still do everything right and still be seen as a thug in some people's eyes makes Justice start to think, is this what Martin Luther King really does? And he decides he wants to live like Martin Luther King and copes with his experience with racism through a series of letters addressed to Martin Luther King Jr. Great sentiment. And the sort of concept of the book I really, really like and I would have loved to read. However, there are a lot of issues. We already talked about the sort of script formatting that I didn't like. On top of that, the writing is weird. It's clearly adult trying to mimic teen speech. And I don't want to compare this with Angie Thomas's The Hate U Give or even On the Come Up, because I don't want to compare one of the only books for teens that talks about police brutality with one of the only other book for teens that also discusses police brutality. But, comparisons are going to come up naturally. And what I do like about Angie Thomas is that her writing feels real. It feels like a teenager would speak the way that she writes. And with this, no, dog, and it doesn't work for me. On top of that, oh my God, there's a lot with this book. I think this book is missing a very pivotal scene, and that's the scene where Justice even decides to write to Martin Luther King Jr. So you have the incident where he is, experiences violence at the hands of a police officer. And then the very next chapter is him writing to Martin Luther King Jr. And there's no scene in which he's maybe trying to deal with these emotions or talking it over with his mom or a friend and then deciding this is what I'm going to do. It just goes. And I think that's an important character moment that you need to have him deliberating with this sort of experience, contemplating it. How is he going to get all of his anger and frustration out? And then you just miss out on that. And that is such an important scene. His sort of on-again, off-again girlfriend, I think her name's Milo or something, I didn't care. His on-again, off-again girlfriend was just there to be evil, I guess. He has a crush on this girl in his class, but he has this on-again, off-again girlfriend, and she serves no purpose other than to throw conflict into their relationship. So, there's a scene where, Justice and the girl are, talking and flirting, and then his sort of kind of girlfriend comes up and literally, runs her finger down, Justice's chest seductively, and then walks away, and then Justice, that's so weird. I don't know anyone who would just do that to someone they like. You see someone attractive and you just, let me just rub my finger down your chest randomly and then walk away. She had no character. She only showed up when it was convenient for the plot, and that's just lazy writing. On top of that, God, this book. So we're getting to spoiler territory, so when I put the book down, that's when you know spoilers are over. I'll try and add a time code, but you know I usually forget this stuff, so sorry. But so spoiler alert, Justice's best friend is shot and killed by a police officer, an off-duty police officer, because he and Justice were playing their music too loud at night, and the police officer just shot into their car. So Justice is obviously devastated by this and upset. You know, his best friend was killed for playing his music too loudly by a police officer who was off duty, and there are almost no consequences for the police officer. So he's dealing with this. He's at the funeral for his best friend, and his mom catches him making eyes with the girl he likes. And the girl he likes is a white Jewish woman, and his mom does not want him to date, you know, a white girl, which is problematic and not good. So Justice and his mom are having a disagreement about it, and the mom is saying, you know, like, I don't want this for you, you know, it's not right. And Justice is rightfully so telling her, this is not okay, you can't be this prejudiced, you know, I'll like who I want to like. But then Justice compares his mother to the cop who shot his friend. My mom is just as bad as that cop who killed my friend. What? I mean, okay, his mom is clearly in the wrong here, but you can't compare the two. There's no comparison, and it's a lazy comparison. It's a lazy book. Guys, I really, really wanted to like this book, but it gets so much wrong, and it's not okay. It is not okay. There are some conversations that I think are interesting, however, it lacks the nuance and the subtlety of The Hate U Give, which is so much better at discussing these topics. The only benefit was that this book was short too, and I hope Nick Stone writes better things in the future because she's a lovely person, but this was not it. Yeah, I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, in case I didn't mention that. Finally, the last book I read was Artemis Fowl, The Arctic Incident by Owen Colfer. This is the second book in the Artemis Fowl series, which, as you know, I am reading for the Artemis Fowl read-along, which is a read-along I do with Car from the Wild Book Garden and Giselle from Giselle Bradley. We read an Artemis Fowl book a month, and then we discuss it. This is all leading up to the live-action Artemis Fowl movie that Disney is releasing, so it's not too late to join us. For the month of March, we are going to be reading The Eternity Code, and you should totally join us. This book, I think I didn't like as much as the first book. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's still very good, and the Owen Colfer sense of humor, for the most part, makes me laugh. I think he's a very funny man, and I like the characters. I just thought Artemis had a bit of a turnaround too quickly, and I'm not a fan of books with snow in them. I don't know why, but if a book has like an icy tundra in it, I don't like it. I think the landscape and the scenery is boring, and there's not much to it. However, there are some things about this book that I thought that, like, I had forgotten that I think is really interesting. So it was nice to dive back into this book. However, I think I'm going to like book 3 a lot more. And those are the books that I read in the month of February. What books did you read? Did you participate in any of the readathons that I mentioned out loud? Please let me know in the comments down below. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow my social media, which is linked down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.